the gym over here has been pretty hot, but I'm not wearing like a whole lot of clothes, and sometimes I'm able to take my shirt off, right? Mm-hmm. But with what you're doing with jiu-jitsu, you're all bundled up, right? You're like, you're in a gi and stuff, right? You must sweat out a lot.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu on its own it's a very, very sweaty martial art, right? You're wearing the gi, it's a heavy, heavy thing. So afterwards, you're typically drenched and the gi's drenched. But then on a hot day, you're sweating even more. You're losing even more like water, electrolytes, etc. It just gets bad, really bad.
And we've been learning a lot in this podcast about the importance, and from guys like Stan Efferding, the importance of sodium. We know we need a lot of sodium. Are you taking in a lot of sodium, and you're finding ways to take in a lot of potassium? Like I think you're a fan of like coconut water and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, a lot of coconut water. I salt the hell out of a lot of my foods. Right. I take some electrolyte supplements, but I add a lot of that because if I don't, I'm going to cramp up really, really bad. I'm just going to feel horrible when performing.
Well, Perfect Keto has a great way of doing it too, where you don't have to necessarily buy coconut water that might cost $8 or $10 a pop. You can actually just supplement it with some capsules, and they have calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium all in one capsule, which I think is a brilliant idea. So maybe, after your jiu-jitsu practice or on your way from lifting to jiu-jitsu, maybe pop 3 or 4 of these capsules on your way to jiu-jitsu practice, and maybe get a little extra feel a little extra hydrated for those workouts.
Yeah, that seems like a great idea.
Hydration is a huge thing. I highly recommend that you guys check out these Perfect Keto electrolytes. Andrew, how can people find out more information about this?
All right, everyone can stay hydrated and in ketosis by going to perfectketo.com/powerproject. Use code POWERPROJECT and get 15% off all Perfect Keto products.
One thing I forgot to add is that when you're on a ketogenic diet, when you're on a low carbohydrate diet, that is very hard to stay hydrated. So check these products out. You're going to enjoy them, I'm sure. I think something that's really cool about Quest Nutrition is that it just started out as an idea. And it started out with Ron Penna's wife making some protein bars for some people in their office. When Ron had a job in a tech business, everybody in the office actually really liked him a lot. And then it just kind of took off from there, and the rest is kind of history. But when they came out with their protein powder a few years ago, I thought it was brilliant that they made it and they designed it specifically so that you can cook with it. So yeah, you can mix it up in a shake and have a good protein shake, but now you can bake with it. You can make cookies and brownies and all kinds of cool things. So I think that's a pretty interesting side of it.
I can't wait for my girlfriend to give that a shot because she loves to bake, and I have no skill baking, so it's going to be good.
I don't know how to bake either.
Yeah, it's like complex.
There's a lot of measuring, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about any of that. Andrew, what do you got over there, buddy?
If you guys want to get your hands on some of these awesome flavored proteins, get all crazy in the kitchen, make up your own little
thingamajig.
What could I call it?
Concoction.
Make your own concoctions. Head over to questnutrition.com, enter promo code MarksQuest at checkout to receive 20% off everything at questnutrition.com.
Certified Piedmontese, you can order all kinds of different steaks. Have you checked out the website?
Yeah. This is it's going to be pretty damn awesome. I love ribeyes. Like, ribeyes are my favorite cut of meat. But when I was doing my bodybuilding show, I was eating a lot of flank steaks and a lot of ground beef. A disgusting amount of ground beef. How about you?
For bodybuilding, I ate chicken, fish, and a lot of steak. There's actually a lot more red meat in the diet than I expected, which was great. The advantage of the Piedmontese, as you know, is just the fat calories are so much lower.
Oh yeah.
But when I was looking at some of the meat that I got from them, I was like, man, this thing is so red. There was no fat marbling in it at all. Mm-hmm. So I was like, this is going to be like chewing on a sneaker. And I thought I was going to end up like chewing on this thing for the next 3 hours, but I was totally wrong. It came out very tender and still was extremely flavorful. So I don't know how they're doing it, but they have these super jacked cows.
Yeah,
you seen
Nigerian
the cows?
Right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think they're from Nebraska.
Yeah, they're from Nebraska. But yeah, no, those pictures of those cows, they look really muscular.
I wonder, do they lift?
Yeah, but they're not on juice, so
what's your favorite
natural cows.
So you said your favorite cut is ribeye. For me, I really like filet a lot. Part of the reason why I like the filet is because you never have to like cut anything away from it. Sometimes with the ribeye, sometimes there's some stuff that's just not not as edible. But I love filet. I also like flank steak. Obviously, I love ground beef. Their ground beef, I think, is superior to any ground beef out there, because a lot of the really lean ground beef just gets to be kind of dry. It's almost like eating, I don't know if you've ever had turkey, like 99% turkey.
I know what you're talking about.
That's a rough, that's a rough go of it. But you can take some of the Piedmontese beef and make your favorite monster mash with it, like our boy Stan the Rhino Efferding does. Throw some, mix in some rice with the ground beef, throw in some bone broth, and you're going to have an awesome meal. But my favorite thing that they have on the website is the tomahawk, because you got that meat handle.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel like a caveman or a barbarian or something. And you can grab it and just, gnaw right through it. Andrew, what's your favorite cut of meat over there?
It's definitely a ribeye. Yeah.
And where can people find out more about certified Piedmontese?
Cool. Our friends at Piedmontese are hooking you guys up with a crazy deal on all their cuts. You can actually head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. Enter promo code Power Project. That's all one word for 25% off your order, along with free 2-day shipping on all orders of $99 and more.
Also, don't forget, they have grass-fed and grass-finished beef as well. Check that out.
Cool. All right, Nsima, we're looking a little, like at least 230 pounds lighter today.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
Are we missing something? I don't think. Everything seems pretty normal to me. Is there anyone missing? We got Smokey. We got
Smokey's
Josh.
here. Josh is here. Phil's here. You're here.
Phil.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Mark Bell's Power Project
seems pretty great.
All right, cool.
No, I'm playing. Marky Mark isn't here.
That's all right. But who is here?
Phil Daru,
What's up, dude?
strength and conditioning coach. You are, dude, the guy who made our rap sheet on you. Like, you're fucking amazing.
That's crazy how you did that, man. I was like, I'm kind of worried. A little bit,
Yeah, Josh can find everything on the
see
internet.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you gotta be
looking at
safe.
it.
Be safe with what you post.
Man, I'll be careful next time for sure.
But you said you got something wrong here. So we were thinking you work with only 60 athletes, but you just mentioned you work with over 80 athletes at American Top Team.
Yeah, I mean, we have over 150 pro fighters at ATC. So for the most part, it's me and another guy that does the strength and conditioning. I primarily work with a lot of he's a Brazilian, so he works with a lot of Brazilians.
Okay.
I work with Junior Dos Santos. I work with Antonio Carlos de Sapato. So
Yeah.
I do work with some Brazilians too as well. Amanda Nunes I've worked with. But again, there's so many fighters, man. So, and we're all at the highest level. So at the end of the day, I end up getting at least 80, 85 right now in camp. And then I also train Olympians for judo and then boxing professionals too as well.
All right. And you look really young. How old are you?
I'm 30. I'll be 31 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you for telling me I look young too. I got carded last night too, by the way. I
Nice.
was like, hell
with that
yeah.
on your face, with that beard?
I know. And how about this? This guy had the same birthday in the same year as me too. It was fucking strange.
That's kinda
man.
creepy.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
What did he look like? Was he wrecked or?
Yeah, he was a little wrecked. So I'm holding it down.
Okay.
31, man.
As a 31-year-old, like everything you've done and the people you've worked with, it's kind of crazy to think about all the success that you've had. So how'd you get here? Like, yeah, what was the path here?
I mean, I started doing MMA. Well, first I played college football, played for Alabama State. I've always been intrigued with building my body, building up strength, building up power for my sports that I played. Started really learning how to properly program and things like that right around 14, 15, because I knew what I was doing wasn't right, and I just kind of grabbed the barbell, started doing floor presses and things like that. I didn't have I didn't have a bench, I didn't have nothing. So I had to bring my teammates over to my garage and we would just hit the weights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, there's gotta be a different way. So I started reading Louis stuff and I started reading, all the old Soviet, texts and things like that, and really started to understand like proper periodization and understanding, how to actually do this the right way. Then from there, after I got out of college, I was actually picking, all my strength coaches' brains about, what I should actually be doing to get better.
And you went to college for
exercise science.
Exercise science.
Yeah,
okay.
exercise science, sports medicine.
Sick.
And then once I was done with that, I was like, man, I still have to compete. I feel like there's a void there. I'm 5'8", guys. You know what I mean? I'm like, I was playing guys your size, you know what I mean? I was a gunner on the kickoff team. Like, there was a lot of concussions going on too. And this kind of leads to later on down the line, I'll talk about that. But basically, yeah. So after that, I'm like, man, I'm from South Florida. So I moved, South Florida, it's, synonymous for football, right? My family moved from South Florida, and obviously I lived in a not so great neighborhood. in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale area, and you know, try to. My family kind of moved my little sister, she's like 10 years younger than me, moved her out of that situation, moved up to a small town, Port St. Lucie, which is like kind of on the come up. And when I got back from Alabama, I was like, man, there's nothing out here to do. And I was like, I have to compete, and I want to still train people, but I still have that competitive edge. I want to try something, and I was boxing on the off season in college, so and I had a Kempo karate background, so I've done a lot of things in martial arts. So I'm like, man, let me try this MMA thing out. Mostly, I was trying to do boxing. I was trying to box. Buddy McGurk had a gym, who is in Vero Beach, is about an hour and a half away. I was like, man, that's pretty far. So I was like, all right, I can still do it. I can make it work, but I was going to try to train 2 or 3 times a day. Like I'm crazy like that. So, needless to say, so I went there, and Dean Thomas, who I know from down south, he's an American Top Team affiliate guy. He had an American Top Team affiliate gym in Port St. Lucie. So I'm like, man, I know ATT. I've been around it. You know, I went there as a kid. So I was like, man, let me go ahead and check him out, see what he's got. Yeah. And I went up to him. I remember he was opening up the gym, and I just kind of ran up on him. He was like, who's this kid? And I was like, I just want to train, let me, just test me out, see how it goes. He's like, yeah, come in, try a class. And from my natural ability as an athlete, and then just knowing how to box, I really took to just the entire thing, just training all the time and making sure that, I was doing the right things all the time. So with that being said, I didn't really want to do grappling. I didn't really want to do jiu-jitsu in the beginning. I was like, I don't really want to roll around with some dudes. Like, I'm like, I'm okay. You know what I mean?
The same way.
Right. So I'm like, all right. And he was like, man, just try it, you know? And my first time out, and I'm not bragging or anything, but the way I took to jiu-jitsu and wrestling and catch wrestling, I was able to, use my strength, use my athleticism to my advantage there. And then once I started to develop the skills and the technique, then, things started to really work and click. And so I had to develop my well-roundedness there. Turned pro probably, I think it was 2011 I turned pro.
As an MMA fighter?
Yeah, as an MMA fighter.
Okay.
My first pro fight was against Kurt Hollabaugh, who fights in the UFC or fought in the UFC. He was probably 12-0 at the time as an amateur. Big name in Louisiana. And just so happened that in Louisiana, that was like right where Dustin Poirier was around at that time. And he was like the main guy over in Louisiana. So I actually met Dustin over there then. And that was, roughly about 9 years ago. Yeah. And he was coming back and forth from American Top Team, but he still wasn't there full time. Okay. And I used to go back and forth to Coconut Creek to spar and things like that. So I honed my skills in, and, I did good, and at that time, I'm like, I still need to make money, because my first pro fight, I made $200, and I think I spent that getting back home. Like, literally didn't make any money, So for all you kids out there that think they're gonna make massive amount of money now, listen, we're getting better, right? Yeah. It was one of my first or my second amateur fight here, and this guy, he looked like Uncle Fester. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, what the? He had no neck whatsoever. And the goal right here is supposed to be like a Division II wrestler or something like that. So I knew he was trying to take me down and things like that. Super green here. I'm still an amateur. There's a lot of things I'm seeing here that's like terrible as far as like my foot placement and like my jab. Like, definitely not a good jab. But yeah, this was a good fight. We went. It was just crazy because back then in amateurs there was no. Now you have shin pads and like there's a lot of different rules now, but in Louisiana back then, like you could even elbow. Like you could elbow, you could knee. Like it was basically a pro fight without getting paid. Yeah. And those gloves that I had on probably weren't regulation, most likely. I remember my first amateur fight was in a place called Cutoff, Louisiana. This is like population 300, like literally, and they were all at the fights. Yeah. And
the whole population was watching.
That's what the town did.
They came by and it was in a barn, I swear. And and I fought a guy from Mississippi, and he's probably like 32 years old. He was like a tough individual, right? Yeah. And I remember I thought that they were gonna give us gloves to wear, and I had a teammate who was a heavyweight, and he had the old like the UFC gloves like you get from Walmart. Ooh. And like I was like, man, I need to use those. Yeah. So he gave me the UFC gloves, and they were probably like 2 ounces. Like they weren't even. And so I ended up smashing that guy with the 2-ounce gloves, man. Yeah. So right here, this is where the jiu-jitsu should have came into play right here.
Yeah. And at this point, you still had barely any jiu-jitsu experience?
Barely any, man. Like,
Jeez.
I'm just stuck in half, and then I'm just trying to like hold on right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he did a good job keeping his hips low and holding me down for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, the problem here is that like right now I need to obviously push his hips away, get full guard, or try to get back up, you know. But
by the way, if you guys are listening to this, you got to see the video because we have his match up on the screen, so you'll have to see what's going on.
Yeah. So I mean, right now it's like, again, he's grinding his elbow into my face and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm just basically trying to control posture so he doesn't, posture up and punch, and doing a good job of that. And then once they stand up, and he kind of knew like there wasn't really anything he could do to me stand up wise. So at the end of the day, his whole goal was to try to take me down. And honestly, right here, I do feel it should have been stood up. There's nothing really going on. There's no damage going on. We're trying to stop like nothing landing. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyways, but yeah, I ended up winning that fight. I ended up kicking him in the face. Like I think at the end it's kind of coming up close, maybe right there at the end of that. But I ended up kicking him in the face, and I didn't know how he didn't go down, man.
It's no neck.
Yeah, that's what
no
it was.
neck.
I was kind of like, damn, why didn't he go down? Like, I'm crazy, but yeah. That's how it was.
I love that the like it was filmed on probably like a mini,
that was definitely on
DV camcorder. It's still
that was definitely on a phone somehow.
Oh, that one was?
Yeah, I think it was my ex-girlfriend was like taping it. She was like cornering me. She's actually a brown belt in jiu-jitsu at the time. So
oh dang.
She was like cornering me, like push his hips. I'm like, no, it's not happening. Dean was in my corner there too as well. But yeah, I mean, it was a good fight for me. It was a good fight for me because the first fight was easier, and I didn't really learn much. I kind of just smashed the kid. And then my third fight, we didn't get it on video, but I went into, it was North Carolina, and the kid was a Duke Division I wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Hometown kid. We were the main event. They brought me in to lose, basically, and it was for a title. And I remember it was the same day weigh-ins. I remember cutting weight in a park and in the sun in North Carolina, and I just turned the heat on and put my sweats on, put my sauna suit on, and put the heat on in the car and try to sweat it out there. We did the same day weigh-ins, and then we went there. I remember him like being like just making it a show, like this is the guy I'm fighting, da da da. So I was already pissed that he did that, Went in there, first round, hit him with an overhand, stunned him, dropped to his knees, and then I guillotined him, put him to sleep in front of his whole crowd, which was cool.
Was that like a 2-minute fight?
Probably, yeah, about 2.5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. What do you think, or from all of your experience and obviously working with all these top fighters, when you see a lot of other strength and conditioning coaches and what they're doing with fighters, what seems to be missing? Because like when you think of S&C, you're like, get this person big and jacked and strong. But what do you think they're missing?
Well, they have to know the individual, right? They have to know how fighters think. They have to know the exact schedules that the fighters go through, right? There's a lot of demands that go through, a fighter schedule inside the week, inside the training day.
Yeah.
So understanding the bioenergetic demands of the sport, understanding what they're doing on a constant basis, that's the big thing is communication between skills coaches. A lot of times the strength and conditioning coaches are distant from the skills coaches. And a lot of times there's a disconnect when it comes down to preparation, right? Most of the S&C guys want to smash them, want to get them in condition and put them through the ringer, right? Well, so does the wrestling coach, so does the BJJ coach, so does the boxing coach. They all want to do the same thing. So having constant communication between coaches is always key. And then obviously you want to make sure that the schedule is down pat. And then you have to know how to manage that fatigue. And you do that through subjective and objective indicators, whether it be an HRV monitor, whether that, just monitoring their heart rate in the morning, grip test, things like that. And then obviously you always want to keep lines of communication open between you and the fighter.
Yeah. So
every time that my guys come in, I know exactly what they did that day, but I also want to ask them how they're feeling because you never know. Like it could be a hard day, especially at ATT. They're always training hard, right? They're always smashing each other. The sparring that they go through, you got guys that are super high level, elite level. So every day they're sparring, it's 110%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no real, okay, we're just going to play around here. A lot of times, especially the older guys, we try to taper them off a little bit earlier because they've just been training for so long.
Talking about as far as their lifting and strength, and
Everything.
everything.
We try to do everything, like as far, because again, I could taper them off of the weight training, but then they're gonna do a hard, rolling session, or a hard grappling session, or a hard sparring session. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So, for stress is systemic. So we want to make sure that everything is calculated.
Okay. And now, because I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. There's a lot of listeners that, like, let's say they want to get into boxing, right? Or they want to get into jiu-jitsu, but they're built and they want to maintain muscle. I know a lot of people who are scared of losing muscle and losing a little bit of strength, getting into a different type of martial art. Yeah. So thinking into that person's kind of brain, what do they need to think about, or what kind of considerations do they need to take while, like, to handle their strength and conditioning, so they don't lose too much strength as they do either jiu-jitsu or boxing, and as they really try and progress in either?
Now, are we talking about making a weight class, or just in general?
Just in general, because a lot of listeners aren't necessarily getting into MMA, but they want to get into, like, I know a lot of people that are getting into jiu-jitsu, maybe want to compete in it or learn it, or they want to get into, like, boxing and compete and learn it a little bit, but they don't want to, like, get small. Like, I've seen pictures of you on your Instagram. You're jacked, but you can still move, and you can
That's good coming from you, man.
But you can still move, and obviously you can still fight. So what type of considerations do they need to think about when structuring their lifting protocol?
Well, definitely you want to work through full ranges of motion, right? You want to increase your ability to move well, and that's doing mobility type work, right? I do a lot of FRC training like we're going to do today, but primarily what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have control of my body in all ranges. So again, I have to make sure that I can put myself in a position and basically explore those ranges in all movements. Base compound movements are always going to be good, right? You got the squat, bench, deadlift, all that stuff too. You want to hinge, you want to carry, you want to pull, you want to do some rotation, right? And then obviously from there, we want to do some more higher dynamic movement patterns, right? Because you have to still be explosive, right? You have to be explosive, but you have to be in control. And I always say, power means nothing without control. So we have to make sure that our body is in a capable position to produce force and redirect force. So we do things from a full spectrum, and I use a conjugate style of an approach, especially when it comes down to, like, my grapplers, but also my MMA guys. Because we have so much limited time to train, so we have to make sure that we're getting everything all in one,
So what kind of movements, like, for that specifically, so that people can have some ideas of some, like, of these dynamic movements you're talking about?
So low level plyometrics, so hops, bounds, jumps like that. Box jumps are always going to be key. I rarely do depth jumps just because of the force impact, and they're getting smashed all the time, and with my jiu-jitsu guys, they barely can jump anyways. No offense, guys. No offense. Right? Because, one, you're in a fixed position all the time, especially if you play on bottom guard. You know what I mean? So things start to happen, you're that kyphotic posture, you're drawn in, tight psoas, tight hip flexors, things like that. So what we want to do is we want to balance out the body too as well. So we work a lot of posterior chain work. We work a lot of oblique sling work. We work a lot of lateral chain. That's going to go ahead and enhance their ability to do work on the mats, but also, reduce the risk of injury. And that's the main thing. What I like to make sure that everybody does is, one, we have to make sure that they are performing well, but we also have to make sure that they're sustaining their ability to progress.
Now, when you talk about, like, postural movements, because I do notice a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, they're like this all the time, or they're so you think that, or what you do is you have them do a lot of back work to even things out, right? Yeah,
I mean, back, glutes, hamstrings, we just do a lot of extension work, good mornings, reverse hypers, a lot of those. And honestly, you have restorative work there too as well. We do a lot of work on the belt squat. So we'll do some traction on that. Sled marches, things like that, just to get more functionality in the entire body. What I've seen lately, especially if you are a guard player, right, is lower back is a little bit weaker because they're rounded forward, right? They barely use that. If you play on top, if that's your game, now you need to have a strong posture, right? Because you don't want them to break your posture. So again, we work a lot, no matter where their game is. We want to make sure that the posterior chain is strong. And then the adductors, hip flexors, things like that, obviously that's going to come into play too. But again, like I talked about before with you, off air, is that it's good to be flexible, but you also have to have control in end ranges, and you have to be strong in those ranges. It's one thing to get in a position, it's another to be strong in that end range position.
And how are you managing, or how are you balancing, not overtraining some of these athletes? Because, like you said, they have the BJJ coach, the wrestling coach, the strength coach, and just how do you manage all that?
Yeah, I mean, well, mostly it's understanding the schedule, right? Understanding the demands of the sport, understanding the skills training. And then from there, you need to have some type of objective measure, right? Whether that be, like I said, a heart rate variability monitor, where it's going to measure the variance of the heart rate. And then from there, we can kind of dictate, okay, how well or how hard are we going to go that day? A lot of things also is that I have so many fighters, a lot of them can't just get an HRV monitor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what I'll end up doing is, I'll watch them, as they go through their movements, as they go through the dynamic movements. And if their coordination's off, or, if they're not talkative, or, they're kind of down, you can see it in their eyes, then I may just go ahead and ask them, what did you do today? And how hard was it? And usually sometimes I'll even go to the training and I'll be there in the gym. So that helped me out a lot, don't get me wrong. But if you're another strength and conditioning coach that just doesn't have the ability to be inside the MMA gym, you need to make sure that you're communicating with the skills coaches. And then from there, they could be like, yeah. And the skills coaches are going to tell you, like, yeah, we kind of pushed them today. Let's back it off a little bit. Now we're getting to the point where before everybody was trying to smash the fighter, right?
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the point, at least in my opinion, that everybody's communicating very well, and we're trying to keep a solid progression going, and we're not trying to smash them every day.
It's funny because we had Andy Galpin on, and he echoed the exact same thing you said. He does more than nutrition stuff for fighters, but he's like all these coaches are smashing these fighters. If everyone can just communicate together, they can get to the fight safely.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's got to be. I mean, you have, like you said, over 80 athletes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, roughly.
So like, how do you personally keep tabs on everybody? Like, that's got to be damn near impossible at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some help. I have an assistant coach that helps me out with that. One assistant, and he's been with me for 3 years now. So he kind of takes it. Like right now, he's working with the guys today. But I mean, always having numbers on them and making sure that we know the schedules at hand. And then from there, I would get in a full assessment. Full physiological assessment, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, things like that. And then I want to see exactly okay, what's the overall training load? What's the workload throughout the week? And a lot of times I only may see them 2 times a week in the weight room. Other than that, they're doing their conditioning and they're always doing their skills training.
Yeah.
So, with that, the proper programming is put into place, and then I make sure that either we run off Prilipin's chart where we can manage out, okay, the overall fatigue. If I don't know their maximum recoverable volume based off of the test that we've done, let's say, for instance, I got guys coming from like Dagestan and, and Poland and things like that, where I don't know much about them. So when they come in and they're 6 weeks out, well, that's not a whole lot of time. We're good.
You got it.
We're good. I was getting nervous.
I was like, what's going on?
I know we're not in trouble.
Your Dagestan and then a bunch of beeps.
That's it. As soon as I said that, I'm like, oh shit, they're coming for me. Dustin.
Nah, because we have this timer issue, and we finally got a timer that works, and I forgot to set it, so I was fast forwarding.
Oh, it's all good. No worries. I'm used to timers, man. Shit runs around the gym all the time, so it's all good.
You were like some PTSD, it's time to go.
Change rounds. Let's go. Get some water. But yeah, and then for a lot of my guys will wear heart rate monitors too as well, and I want to make sure I'm gauging the intensities based off the heart rate monitor. Especially with the conditioning, and then also do it with the skills training too, especially when they're sparring. I want to see how much they can push it and where they're going to be when it comes down to it. A lot of times their threshold is usually sitting around 175, 180. And that's really when they're pushing it, in sparring. And a lot of my guys have maximal heart rates up in the 210s, 215s.
Yeah.
My Dustin VO2 max is up in the 60s, so I mean, his ability to manage stress is high. And that if you make it to that level, you have to have that ability, mentally and physically, you have to be able to cope with the stresses put upon you. So with that, we don't want to smash them even more in a controlled environment. I want to make sure that they're getting the optimal amount of training, not the maximal amount.
On that note, I want to ask you this, and this is kind of there's going to be 2 parts to this. I know that all the fighters you work with, you probably have different cardio protocols for them because they all have different demands with all their different coaches. But with the example I gave you for someone who is getting into some boxing, or they're getting into some jiu-jitsu or some kind of martial art, and they're lifting, but they want to become more conditioned for their sport, for that sport, right? And they don't want to lose a lot of strength or anything. What can they add into their weekly protocol to help their cardio out?
It really just depends on their weaknesses.
Okay.
That you have to see through an assessment. A lot of times you either there's a respiratory issue, whether it be, they just need to increase their VO2 max. And that just could be just aerobic capacity work. And I know a lot of times the guys don't want to do long distance running and LSD work or something like that. You can do tempo runs, you can do things with, you can do things with the prowler that I like to do a lot. When it comes down to, let's say, local muscular endurance, right, you're looking at it more from a tempo method perspective. So if my guys are good as far as their breathing and they have a good respiratory rate, but they're fatiguing in their, let's say, their legs, right? So then we're gonna have to go ahead and we're gonna have to work the legs through a specific time frame. So what we'll do is we'll do tempo method off of camp before they start camp. So
Can you explain the tempo method just a little
sure.
bit?
So let's say, for instance, you're doing a squat, right? We'll go ahead and do a tempo of a 3-0-3.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So 3 seconds eccentric, 0 seconds isometric, 3 seconds concentric. And they'll just run through that movement throughout time. And I either do a time-based, whether it be a minute, 2 minutes, something along the lines of that, very long in duration, but you're gonna build a little bit of hypertrophy there. But for the most part, you're just driving lactate into the muscle.
Yeah.
Right. So you're having the ability to buffer that lactate going further because you're putting the stress upon it. So, and then another thing we do is lactate retention. So I'll do the tempo method and then I'll go ahead and I'll superset that with the lactate retention, basically meaning I trap the lactate into the working muscle that allows it to buffer it in the long run, right? So again, we're putting that stress into that particular body part. It's able to cope with those stresses, and then from further on down the line, you'll be able to buffer it out a little bit more efficiently.
So as an example, how would that look with the squat? So you did the squat 3-0-3 for a minute to 2 minutes. What is the movement afterwards to trap that lactate?
All you got to do, just do a low squat, sit down into a position. You don't have to sit in a, let's say just a isometric squat. You can actually sit into a low squat, hold on to the wall, especially if you have mobility issues, and you just trap that lactate into the muscle. Cal Dietz does this a lot too as well. I'm trying to phase it. Yeah. It sucks. And I'll do it a lot. I also do it with sled marches or prowler marches. And we'll put a substantial amount of weight on the prowler and then have them work through that range in a concentric motion. So they're having to push, you know how it is with the prowler.
Yeah.
So they'll have to push when every step is a dynamic movement step. So you're actually getting that fast twitch muscle capacity, and every step's the start step. So they're explosive, right? And they have to do that for a longer duration. And we'll do that off of camp primarily just to get the body ready to go and get a base of that athletic and that strength, going further into camp.
You did mention athletes having problems with their breathing, and I really wanted to ask you about this because we had Patrick McEwen. He's okay. So yeah, he's the author.
I'm Patrick. I'm oxygen certified.
I'm so happy you said that, bro.
That's perfect.
No, dude, I'm so happy you said that because so after we had him on, a little bit before that, I started focusing on nasal breathing, and that helped me so much with my endurance.
For sure.
Our boy Joshua Settlage over here, who's done wrestling for years.
Yeah, I can see the ears.
Yeah, you can see the ears.
I see the ears.
Right? He started.
I see it, Josh. I see you.
Yeah, he also started doing nasal breathing. How long ago was it, Josh? 8 months ago. So he has a lot of experience in grappling, and he even noticed a big difference in how calm he is and all of that. So can you talk to us about I guess how you help, first off, why nasal breathing might be important for anyone doing this type of work, and then how you help athletes get better at that.
Well, Patrick talks a lot about the nasal breathing to increase the parasympathetic response, right? It's to increase the diaphragmatic breathing, right? So if you can breathe through the diaphragm, it's more optimal breathing than mouth breathing, right? When you bring down the parasympathetic response up, you bring down the heart rate. So it allows you to do more things without having to bring that heart rate up. So you're decreasing your stress as you're going through the movement, right?
Yeah.
Again, we do a lot of breath holds for high intensity intervals, especially getting closer to camp. But outside of camp, we'll do nasal breathing through an aerobic work. So let's say, for instance, they're doing some low level aerobic plyometrics, right? We'll have them nasal breathe, or I'll even tape their mouth shut and have them work through that. Again, like I said, you're with everything, increasing the nasal cavity, you're increasing that parasympathetic response.
The cavity is actually getting bigger?
It should, yeah. I mean, a lot of my guys have deviated septum, so it's not as optimal as we want, but at the end of the day, we still want them to be able to do that. Again, when you're talking about fighting too, you don't want to have your mouth open. You get caught that way, knockouts become more prevalent there. So we want to make sure that the mouth is closed and we're breathing optimally, and that's the main thing. Is nasal breathing has been shown that's going to increase optimal breathing patterns, which is going to help with diaphragmatic breathing, which is going to help with bringing down that stress response and get you to do more throughout the fight.
How can someone start because like I know a lot of people who have a problem with that. They feel like they just can't keep their mouth shut when they're exercising or doing that type of work. What's the best way to start implementing that and bring that into your training?
So a lot of times, like with the deviated septum, that's going to be hard. You know, mostly I'll level with them. I'll say, you know, try to breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. The first one, right? We do it all the time. But it's hard when, you know, you start to really push the pace. You don't do it. You don't know you're doing it, right? It's just, you know, it's a response that you do, right? The goal really is to you want to do it in an aerobic way first, so that you're not bringing the heart rate up maximally. Okay. And then you can get used to it. And I usually say, you know, Patrick does say, you know, you want to do it first while you're just doing your daily activity. Then you want to try to increase it by, you know, doing it while you sleep. If you wake up and your mouth is dry and things like that, obviously you know you're doing some type of mouth breathing at night. That means you're not getting adequate amount of sleep too. That's going to hinder your performance. It's going to hinder, you know, your energy output, things like that. So first and foremost, I would say start doing nasal breathing while you're just doing your daily activity, right? Could be, you know, cleaning the house, whatever, you know, walking, you know, going for a light walk. Then from there, you can start to increase it. Now, again, you have to do your BOLT score, which is your body oxygen level test, right? If your body oxygen level test is higher than 20 seconds, then you can start to work into, let's say, some more higher aerobic work, or doing your strength and conditioning with a nasal breathing. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying do a nasal breathe when you're doing max load, right? You know, obviously you have to create maximal intra-abdominal pressure and things like that. That's going to take your mouth. That's going to take everything. But when you're doing that lower level aerobic work, let's say, for instance, you're drilling, right, on the mats, it's perfect to do, right? Because it's lower level aerobic work. Yeah. You're doing something technical, and you're increasing your ability, one, to bring up the nasal cavity, and you're giving yourself the ability to start to understand how to properly breathe through those stress situations. You know, so it just goes in progressions there. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, man. No, I'm so happy. Like, I'm so happy that we're not crazy.
That works, man.
Right?
You know, when we tell people that we tape our mouth shut to go to sleep, people do think we are weird. Yeah. I can't remember what Patrick said, but we asked him like straight up, like, what percentage do you make your athletes train, you know, through nasal breathing? Like, I know you said like for the heavier stuff, but like if you had a percentage that you can put on it, like, do you think you would have one?
Man, it's a lot. I would say at least 50 to 60% of the time.
Okay, cool. So it's good just to put a number on it.
Like, for sure, especially off camp when we're trying to build a base of aerobic capacity. Definitely, we'll try to do the nasal breathing, and then from there, I do a lot of breath holds, especially in camp when we're doing the higher intensity work. Like, for instance, we'll have like a protocol for me would be a prowler push. We use the prowler for a lot of things, but we'll do alactic capacity training, where it basically is increasing the ability to reproduce power for a long duration. That's the fight game. So what I'll do is I'll have them sprint with the prowler down. I'll have them breathe in. They'll blow all the air out as they're pushing it about 20 yards. Okay. Then they'll hold their breath once they hit the turn, and come back 20 yards with
holding their breath.
With their breath held with the air out. Whew. Right?
Oh, man. Okay.
You do that for 10 rounds, right? You get a 20-second break. You want to breathe. But the catch here is that you want to be able to catch your breath between 5 or 6 seconds, right? And they're doing active recovery by shadow boxing or pummeling or whatever the case. Wow. But they're nasal breathing as they recover. So what we've seen there is their ability, one, is to bring down their heart rate faster, which is going to help with increased ability to produce power for a long duration. Yeah. So the goal for that is to obviously making sure that they can cope with the stresses put upon them, especially inside a fight when you're getting smashed and, you know, you might have somebody laying down on you. You know how it is when you do jiu-jitsu. And the same thing. So we have to, one, saturate the body with that carbon dioxide, right? Have the ability to, you know, sustain that amount of stress, produce air hunger, and then from there they can cope with that stress. It's the same thing we do with the lactate retention. Yeah. So I'm putting all these stresses on them so that they can deal with it later on.
Has any of the fighters just had some like insane, crazy BOLT score?
Not really, man.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, not really. I guess the highest one, even Dustin, with his VO2 being in the 60s, I think it was around 25. Okay. So it's not like up in the 30s or 40s. I don't know, Josh, what's yours? Let's do it right now. Let's do it right now.
Yo, that bolt, like doing that bolt test, it's difficult. It's like you exhale everything.
It's funny.
Then you hold, right?
Yeah, I was doing it I was doing breath holds on the way out here on the plane. So I do like breath holds like periodically.
Yeah.
I even do it while I'm driving.
I don't want
to tell you guys to do that though, by the way. Don't do a fucking max breath hold, please. Yeah. I don't condone that, by the way. But yeah, I'll do them periodically throughout the day, and then I'll also measure out how many times I breathe in a minute. You want to make sure that you're breathing at least, well, at the most 5 or 6 breaths a minute. When you can get there, then you're breathing optimally at that point.
Got it.
For the breath holds, just so people can have an idea of what this is. And if you guys haven't gotten that book, The Oxygen Advantage, just go grab it.
For sure.
But can you tell them about breath holds real quick?
Yeah, I mean, well, for the most part, you're looking at it from, you're trying to increase, again, that carbon dioxide saturation. You're trying to increase the ability to take in oxygen and utilize it.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is, again, you're increasing hemoglobin inside the blood, so it's activating or giving your body oxygen to the working tissue, wherever it may be. For instance, for us, like I said, with the prowler push, you're increasing the oxygen utilization. So again, I'm actually increasing VO2 per se, right? And that's the best way we can do it. From a high altitude standpoint, you're actually imitating high altitude training, right? You're not gonna do it. It's not fully there. You're not gonna go in it's not like Colorado, but at the end of the day, if you're living at sea level, like I am, right? The goal is to make sure that we can get the most out of that particular response. So we do the breath holds to simulate high altitude, to increase that ability to take in and utilize oxygen, right? And then also, that CO2 saturation is going to be key too, because it helps you increase your ability to not have air hunger.
Got it.
Right?
Do this. Don't buy masks. You see a lot of people with those training masks.
Here's the thing. Patrick has masks that it actually, yeah, I know. So I was like, oh man, this guy's got a fucking training mask. I was like, so the whole thing behind that is, obviously it's not going to simulate high altitude there. What it is going to do is going to help with the diaphragm. It's going to strengthen up the diaphragm.
Okay.
It's going to enhance nasal breathing, because the goal is to breathe through the nose when you have that mask on. If you go to oxygenadvantage.com, Patrick, I better get some money for this shit, man. But if you go there, they have the mask there too as well, and they have the strips for the mouth to close the mouth up.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Let me ask you this, because we were talking about this a bit before, and you mentioned it a little bit here: mobility, functional mobility, all of that. How can, or what should people be doing to bring that in? Because you don't only just do static stretching.
No. For the most part, functional range conditioning is what I use the most. Basically what that is that's increasing movement control, active range of motion, and then getting you strong in those ranges. So again, like I said, flexibility is just passive range of motion. That's passive flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Mobility is the ability to move and be flexible, but be strong in those end ranges. So we are trying to enhance the ability to be strong in all types of ranges and all types of movements. And so what we do is we'll do things like pails and rails, which is progressive and regressive angular isometrics, and just an isometric tension, right? So you're basically exploring those ranges and getting strong in the ranges of where you're stuck at, right? A lot of times when your body isn't capable of being in a position, it shuts down. It's like walking on ice, right? When you walk on ice and you're not stable, your body freezes up, right? We're giving the ability to walk on ice. And what I mean by that is we're giving stability and strength in ranges that aren't really there yet, and then we can enhance the strength in those ranges, and then that'll give you that optimal mobility, which will allow you to get in those flexibility issues. Like, let's say for instance, it's one thing to get into a split, it's another to actually bring your leg up to your head.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're activating those muscles that allow for that movement to happen. So we're trying to get those muscles strong, and we're trying to make sure they're strong through isometrics.
Got it. Can you give us an example of what that would look like with a few movements?
Yeah, so he does a lot of base position movements. I use a lot of 90-90 bear sit to let's say for instance an S guard, right? Okay. So basically what that means is you have external internal rotation of your hip, and you're sitting into position with your, obviously, a good posture. Then from there you're gonna do what's called progressive, or PAILs, progressive angular isometrics. You're gonna actually push down with the antagonistic muscle on the externally rotated front leg. You'll push down into the floor. You'll ramp up from about 30% all the way up to 100%. Then from there, we'll back it down, 80, 60, 30. Then from there, we'll do what's called regressive angular isometrics, which is rails. We'll use the muscle, like let's say the adductors, right? And we'll use the muscle of the adductors to actually pull the leg up in that passive end range that you have while you're sitting on the floor, right? Or when you're stuck on the floor.
Yeah.
So you get into a passive end range, then you work actively to increase the passive end range. So that becomes your new passive end range.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
A little bit.
You'll have to
I
see
just
it
can't
too. It's a
wait
little bit
for,
harder.
we're about to do this on video. So it's going to be, is this some of the stuff you're talking about?
So yeah, this is controlled articular rotations. Junior right here is, believe it or not, is super tight in his hips, right? But yeah, so this is what we call controlled articular rotations. This is just basically movement prep. So here is where I'm getting them comfortable, getting in ranges, using their muscles to activate movement control in the joint capsule. So right here, we're doing some ankle rotations. We're just trying to basically disassociate the ankle from the knee joint, right?
Yeah.
So I'm having them lock down their knee. Right here, if you're looking at it, we have, this is just a butterfly sit, so it's another base position that I use. And this is what we call, this is eccentric loading. So what you're doing is when you come down, they're actually pushing down their knees with, let's say, their abductors, right? And as they come up, they're pulling into their elbows. So they're activating their adductors, they're activating their abductors as they come up and down. And they're doing a passive range of motion.
Yeah.
And then they're working into active range of motion. So they're going through a flow here.
Gotcha.
But they're using their muscles to pull their body into position and then pull away from the position.
Got it. Let me ask you this, because I know that a lot of people, you're answering a lot of questions here, but they want to be able to get, like, I guess, some of these resources.
Yeah.
So for like some FRC stuff, and then also, in terms of like, I guess, like books or something that you learned a lot of this stuff from, because I know a lot of this isn't just book knowledge. There's a lot of, obviously, practical experience here.
For sure, yeah.
Where can somebody start to learn some of this stuff?
Well, the functional range conditioning you can get online. I believe it's functional range conditioning seminars.com.
Sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that you can do. Dr. Andre Ospina is a guy that I've learned from. He's actually a martial artist. And then another obviously you got the oxygen advantage that I utilize too as well. The things that I teach, I do seminars around the world right now. So I do kind of like a basic introduction to FRC. Well, we'll do controlled articular rotations. We'll probably do a base position there.
Yeah.
They'll understand it, they'll learn it, and then they'll go ahead and do the certification. I also have an online course for coaching that I use for coaches around the world. So if you want to get involved with all my methodologies, all my protocols that I use, there's an online course that you can take. We do a weekly consult call with all the coaches. I have about 45 coaches right now around the world. So they get all my methods.
This out. Yeah.
Man, I got you. Don't worry. Yeah, so they get all my methods. They get all my protocols. They get all the new articles that I write up. They'll get some stuff that I've learned, some new studies. I'll send them over to them. So I mean, it's a community of coaches, and they're all very sharp guys and girls. The good thing is that they're all willing to learn. It's not just for combat sports though. It's for everything. I got guys and girls that coach rugby. I got a guy who coaches, I think, gymnastics, believe it or not. So I mean, it all comes into play because at the end of the day, it's just getting the body ready and capable, getting the physiology ready and capable to do work. Yeah. And that's the goal, and that's primarily what I'm trying to do in the long run is to coach coaches. Yeah.
Wow. Sick. Andrew, you got anything over there?
Yeah, dude. Anytime like I see anybody that's associated with like anything UFC, I just become such a fangirl. Like straight up, like I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm just like straight up groupie.
Yeah.
What was it like working with the baddest chick on the planet, dude? Fuck Amanda Nunes. Like,
yeah. I mean, Amanda's a sweetheart, man. Yeah, she's a different breed, man. I think people don't see it because they see like, oh man, she's just killing people in the cage. Right. Amanda's she's actually one of my favorite people. As far as just being with fighters, they're all different, right? And I love all my don't get me wrong, I love all my fighters like they're my kids, and even some of them are older than me. Like King Mo is fucking ancient, you know what I mean? He's fucking ancient. I had Andre Arlovsky, he's still like a kid to me, you know what I mean? But I mean, with her, she's always willing to have. She has fun in training, which is very important. She's always willing to try new things, and she beats her own drum. You know what I mean? She kind of does what she needs to do. She knows what she needs to do. She's a true professional, and you can see it when she goes about her daily training. She dictates. I don't want to say she dictates the training, but she knows what she needs. At this point in time, with a lot of the guys and girls that we have at American Top Team, they've been in it. They know what they need. They know what they don't need. And the good thing is that when they know what they need, they go out and get it.
I didn't even know that thing had a timer.
So
Eventually, we'll figure out this damn shot clock situation.
Yeah.
And then, so opening up like news apps and whatnot. Dana White is talking about Joanna facing Zhang for the title, right? Do you know anything about that?
Did you get her bobblehead yet? I gotta get her bobblehead.
No. Oh my god, dude, that'll sit right there on the table.
I'll make it happen.
That'd be sick, dude. Yeah.
She got a bobblehead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the best matchup for her. Believe it or not, she has proven this last fight that she's back, and I believe in a major way. She brought up, her strength, she brought up her power. You can see physically she's bigger. Luke Thomas said something on his podcast. You guys know who Luke Thomas is?
I don't.
Big name.
Josh does.
Yeah. So bigger. He's he's like a lifter. He likes lifting a lot. So that's cool. But he's a major journalist in the MMA world.
Okay.
Right. Works with Ariel Helwani, and he came on. He was like, man, look how she looks substantially bigger from when she started, like the first 4 fights in the UFC to now. And, obviously the weight cut is an issue there. She's getting bigger. That is what it is. A lot of these guys, like Dustin, is never going to make 145 again, ever in his life. We got to cut a limb. You know what I mean? It's just, fighters get bigger. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And they grow, they expand and things like that. And it's harder for them to lose the weight. I think if she has the chance to regain the title, it's against this girl. And I know that Zhang is a phenomenal fighter. Don't get me wrong. But styles make fights. And that style right there is perfect for Joanna. And we've changed some things as far as her ability to move, and we're changing the rhythms. The thing what happened with Rose was that Rose already had the blueprint of what Joanna does. When you're at the top, right? When you're at the top of the mountain, everybody's looking at you. Rose was training for Joanna way before Joanna even know who Rose was. So when you get there and you're at the top, you're only trying to increase your abilities. You're not working towards getting to that degree of competition, right? Now we know we needed to change some things, and now she's changing her rhythm. She's moving a lot more efficiently. She's not just forward and back. You could see that she's really working her angles. She's working her rhythm, and now putting it all together, I feel like this is the best opportunity to get that strap back.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you hear all the time, right? Like you have to take a step back in order to, step forward, obviously.
Yeah.
But like that loss, like you just said, is going to propel her to get that strap back.
Yeah.
In the strawweight division, how the hell do you maintain size and muscle and strength while cutting down to such a light weight?
Yeah, the weight cut is a science behind itself.
Yeah.
We have George Lockhart, that works with a lot of the guys there.
Yeah.
You guys know George is.
Yeah, yeah, he's been on here.
Yeah. So George is a good friend of mine. He does a phenomenal job. He has great protocol. I follow it also, when it comes to the fighters that we have here. And, at the end of the day, it's really about just trying to manage a certain percentage off of camp, right? You don't want to get, especially for females, you don't want them anywhere higher than about 15% from scale weight. That's year round, because again, some of them will take fights on short notice, things like that. When they start camp, you want them about 12% from scale weight. And if they're anywhere higher than that, it's gonna be a hard cut. But it is tough. What I'll do especially when we start camp, we'll do a lot of isometrics. We'll do a lot of quasi isometrics, overcoming isometrics. So we're getting them strong in those ranges, like I said, but we're not putting on any added muscle mass. Now, again,
you're careful not to let them gain muscle during that period.
Yeah, very careful, especially Joanna. That really depends. Some of the guys need to put on some body mass just to make sure that they're not going to get injured. Yeah, but for her, it's very tough. She walks around probably now about 138. Oh, and she's a big girl. She's 5'7", 5'6".
Damn, I didn't know she was that tall.
Yeah, and her legs are big. She's
how big is Zhang then?
I think Zhang's shorter, way shorter.
Yeah,
I think she's 5'4". I'm not too sure, but I think she's shorter for sure.
Whoa, I didn't know she was that tall though, man.
Yeah. Joanna's tall.
Yeah,
for sure. If you look, she's probably, she's probably her top of her head's probably about my nose height, so I'm 5'8". You know what I mean? So at that point, she's up there. Wow. And on top of that, she's thick. She's a thick girl. Legs, her upper body obviously stays lean. So that's another thing. And then when I'm seeing her, when she came into camp this time, she was doing the off-camp training. She was primarily just working out, just doing weight training, because she doesn't have a whole lot of skills training she could do in Poland. And she does like all these little things around the world. So she does like, guest appearances and all that stuff. So she was just trying to find just weight training around other places she was traveling to. So she would do the training that I had for her. And yes, it's going to put on some muscle mass. When she came into camp, she was already super lean. I could see abs on her at 135 pounds. So at that point, I'm like, okay, we only got a little bit left. Wow. Yeah, we only got a little bit left here. So I'm like, okay, George, we got to figure this out, man. But yeah, and then,
starting a water cut at the beginning of camp.
Yeah, like, and then it's also the diet has to be monitored a lot, on a daily basis. And that's going to dictate the training too. Getting closer to the fight, we bring down the strength and conditioning, substantially. A lot of the times she'll do some conditioning. A lot of that from about 4 weeks out is just maintenance in a way. I may only have her 1 day a week in the weight room.
Dang.
And that's just for maintenance, right? And a lot of it because of the fact that she's just doing so much. Yeah. And she's trying to bring down the weight, and she's calorie deprived, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So since
I like to see her at 125, to be honest. I like to see her get this title back and then go to 125.
Yeah. So if like, let's say she is walking around 125, or she's at 15%, whatever that may be, ideally, like, how long should the camp be, like, in your opinion?
I mean, usually it's 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, 8 weeks is optimal. You know, and I know. I mean, because of the fact that everything has to come into play. Like, she has to get her wrestling on point. She has to get her grappling on point. She has to get her sparring, but also get timing down. And then we have to monitor it and dictate it towards the opponent. So she has to get her sparring in with the opponent or with the sparring partner that's going to obviously mimic the opponent.
Right.
Yeah, so it's going to be about 8 weeks for sure.
That's exciting, man. I can't wait for that fight.
Yeah, and we're looking. I'm hoping it's like going to be at the same time that Dustin fights.
Ooh, okay.
So like we're looking at probably March.
Does he have somebody coming up?
Nah, I mean there's options there. You could fight Gagey again. You could fight. He could fight Cowboy. He could fight Connor.
Josh, who do you want to fight?
Everybody.
Yeah. I know. Like, McGregor keeps talking shit like he's gonna fight Cowboy coming up, but I think he just gets so bored, right? Like, he's like, nobody's talking about me. I want to say something.
I don't have no problems with Connor, man.
Yeah.
I actually, I mean, George Lockhart works with
absolutely.
him. I've spoken with him before. He's all right.
We get all fired up anytime somebody that we have a connection with that's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
So like, Yeah,
no, I hear you. Listen, Dustin's like a brother to me. So
cool.
Like when that happens, like if Connor fights Dustin, then obviously
right.
Now,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And I'll be the first there to back him up, especially on Twitter. Fucking Twitter. That's terrible.
All right. You got anything else coming up? Go for it.
Real quick. Do you have, because like obviously with all these athletes, do you have a tier list in terms of like recovery that people can think about dealing with? Because we talk about sleep so much, so we know that's a big thing.
Sleep is important. Nutrition is important. Yeah. Ice baths. I feel like ice baths and contrast baths are number one. Ice baths in general, in my opinion, especially in camp. Maybe not so much off camp, especially they're trying to put on size. Obviously that's going to hinder the strength and the hypertrophy. But for the most part, especially in camp, especially like after sparring, after grappling, definitely a go-to for me.
Okay.
A lot of the guys like to use CBD. Not too familiar with CBD in that perspective. Like turmeric, like ginger, things like that. Any anti-inflammatory can be good. We use a mix of ginger and turmeric. And then after that, we do some recovery type of restoration exercises or workouts that we'll do. Long distance running actually helps, believe it or not.
Like slow pace,
super slow pace, 120 beats per minute at the most. Or swimming if you don't want to bang the joints, especially the heavyweight guys. And then some lower intensity, way lower, like 30-40%. So just some pump work, just in the gym, especially for accessory work,
Yeah.
A lot of the guys like to do shoulders and triceps and things like that. And that's honestly just a feel good thing.
Yeah.
And it's just to get blood flow, and to drive nutrients into the muscle.
Okay. And as far as the ginger and turmeric is concerned, what is that supposed to be beneficial for? Because I've heard a lot about turmeric.
Just anti-inflammatory, man.
Okay.
Yeah, it just brings down the inflammation. Turmeric's been known to bring down inflammation. Ginger's been known to bring down inflammation. You put those two together, it's been helpful for us at least. And then when you're talking about like traumatic brain injury and things like that, the onset of that, we've, studies have been shown now that creatine monohydrate also helps the onset of traumatic brain injury.
As if we needed another excuse.
Creatine.
So I got one. I got a good one. I got a good one. So Dustin, we found this out, right? And we got the study from ISSN. And ISSN is a close partner with me. I work closely with those guys. They were like, yeah, man, you get them doing this amount. It's like 2.5 before sparring and 2.5 after. This is similar to like weight training, right? And he's like, all right, cool, because he's sponsored by On It. So he's got this drink that he drinks before, and it has about 5 grams of creatine. Then he'll drink something after, has 5 grams of creatine. And then he has another, he has regular creatine that he bought because of the fact. He came in one day, he goes, man, I'm like 7 pounds up from like last week. And I go, well, what changed, man? Are you stressing? Like, what's the problem? And this was like 6 weeks from the fight. And he went from like 172 and he shot up to like 183.
Dang.
Like it was like, and it was all water. You could tell. I'm like, bro, are you stressed? Like, because sometimes he does get stressed. He gets sick closer to the fight. That's just a mandatory thing for him. I'm like, bro, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just eating too much carbs. And I'm like, you don't eat carbs. Like he doesn't. I don't know. He works well off fats. I mean, it is what it is, and he holds a lot of water too. So I'm like, okay. So then he goes, Phil, man, I know what it was. He was like, I was taking 15 grams of creatine a day, and I was like, well, that makes fucking sense. No wonder. So yeah, we had to kick it back and things like that. But yeah, we found out what that was. So don't do 15 grams of creatine, by the way. Yeah, that'll not work out well for you.
Just sold all the creatine out. People trying to gain.
That's sick.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, just seeing what you got coming up next, Phil.
Next, I go to Italy. I have a 3-city tour seminar in Italy. So I go to Rome. Alessio Sakara, you guys know who that is. He's a Bellator fighter.
Okay.
He set that up for me, and I'll be doing those. And then just the online stuff, you know what I mean? The programs that I have out: ground control, fight ready, heavy hitter, boxing program, MMA program, and a BJJ program. Doing really well, helping a lot of people out. So that's really good. Nice. The goal really for that is just I can't coach everybody, and I want to reach and help everybody else the most amount I can. So with these programs, it allows me to do so. And we've been seeing tremendous results with those programs. And then the coaching course, the mentorship is something that's big for me now. The 45 coaches that we have, everybody's getting good results with their athletes. It's good because then I get to, again, my goal is to make sure that I can help as many people as possible. And if I can help the coaches that help those people, that's a win-win for me. So with that being said, other than that, hopefully we'll have some fights coming up. I have a KSW champ, Scott Askham, he's fighting pretty soon. Bunch of other fighters. Obviously, every weekend's a big fight for me. So, I mean, this weekend we have 3 guys fighting. Next weekend I have 2 guys fighting. Following weekend I think I have 4 or 5, and then we have Amanda's fighting. For the title. Kobe's fighting. So,
damn. Where can people find out more information about everything?
You can go. I mean, Instagram. I'm always doing things on Instagram. So at Daru Strong is my Instagram. My YouTube channel, Phil Daru Strong, and then my website darustrong.com.
Cool. And Nsima, where can people find you?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube.
Cool. I am Andrew Z. I'll do the first part. You do the second part.
Okay.
Strength is never a weakness.
What's the second? No, I'm joking. Weakness is never a strength. Catch y'all later.
Peace.
Nice.